One of the things that binds us as Americans and as Montanans is this deep affinity for public lands and access to those lands.
A federal fund that doesn't cost taxpayers a dime helps thousands of natural resource projects across the country.
We're doing a lot of experimentation to make the environment better, not only here on our farm, but for the people in our community.
Farming may seem like an ageless profession, but these innovators are getting higher yields with less fertilizer. Even the local animals are thriving.
This stream is in good shape, so landowners in this watershed are doing a great job.
Check all the bearings?
I did. I checked all the bearings. I got it ready to go.
We've got our bearings set for another episode of This American Land.
Hello and welcome to This American Land. I'm your host, Ed Arnett. We've got some great stories for you today about the conservation of America's natural resources, our landscapes, waters, wildlife, and the people that are dedicated to conservation across the country. Our system of public lands in America are vast, over 640 million acres, and that's nearly 1/3 of the U.S. land base. I'm going to take you now to Montana, where we'll meet conservationists, landowners, businesses, and local officials to discuss what many consider to be the most important, yet least known and understood conservation and access program in America, the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So we're here in northwest Montana on some public lands purchased with Land and Water Conservation Funds. And we're going to do a little turkey hunt up here, Land.
I'm excited about it.
I'm here with President and CEO of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Land Tawney. Got to get up early and get out before the birds wake up. They're on roost right now. And then we're going to hopefully hear some gobbling and see if we can pull something in.
So in 1964, Land and Water Conservation Fund is established.
So you can see this particular tree, the birds can roost on those limbs.
Really, this is when offshore oil development was happening in the Gulf of Mexico, and to take from one resource and give back to another was the idea. And so basically you're taking excise taxes and putting that back into conservation access here in the United States.
And recreational opportunities as well.
Exactly. Every single county has been touched by this fund. And so whether that's a soccer field, a swimming pool, a fishing access site, that runs the gamut, but it's really for recreation and to get people outside.
So this particular piece of property that we're sitting on was actually private land. And it could have been sold to developers, but through the vision of a conservation organization like the Nature Conservancy, they were able to purchase this property and make it for public access, correct?
Yeah, not only is it made for public access, but this is actually in the public ownership now too, which means it belongs to you and I and everybody else in America. The red is the Indian paintbrush. And so to me, it's a perfect way to not only provide access opportunities, but also, help generate that outdoor economy that is $887 billion in this country. And that's with places like this that are close to, Missoula is only 20 minutes away. This is not a far drive this morning. So it's accessible to a ton of people to out here and recreate.
When people use their public lands, they also spend money, and that helps the local economy and creates jobs that are linked to conservation.
Missoula, all of the wilderness areas we have around here have become a draw for people from all over the world. And so we see those folks come to town, and they sometimes spend a week here, and they impact all different parts of the economy. They stay in hotels, they eat in restaurants, they shop at stores like the Trailhead.
Todd, tell me a little bit about your time owning this store and running it.
Well, I've been involved here since 1994. So really my entire career has been based around the Trailhead. Our business is really built on the back of public lands and public land access. Without that, people don't have a place to recreate. So, without public lands, we really don't have a customer base. We really don't have a business. And so for us, the regular guy, the regular citizen who lives here, has a chance to get out on the water and get out in the mountains in a way that wouldn't exist if we didn't have public lands.
So do you come to the park often?
I actually come here almost every day.
Really?
Yep, all year long.
So this place is really important to you?
Absolutely. That's kind of our church, It's where we find our happy places and, how we like to live our lives.
And what about public lands? Are they important to Montanans?
Absolutely. Personally, they define who I am.
Anything we do that's good requires partnerships. The city of Missoula can't engage in purchasing and maintaining public lands alone. Lived here all my life. Pretty remarkable place to live.
Well, I'm here with John Engen. He's the mayor of the city of Missoula.
This is Silver Park. This has Land and Water Conservation Fund money in it. It's a program that has been a great tool for the city of Missoula. Montanans value access to public lands, and that value translates into the way we build communities. It translates into the way we invest, and it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on, and those aisles seem to get further and further apart. One of the things that binds us as Americans and as Montanans is this deep affinity for public lands and access to those lands. It's a tie that binds.
Almost every county in every state in the union actually has benefited in some way, shape, or form from those LWCF funds. What do you think about that?
Well, I hope we don't lose our public lands and these kind of parks. So, I mean, what can we do to protect these places?
Everybody ought to be invested in standing up for the LWCF funding when it's threatened, because it helps everybody.
The Land and Water Conservation Fund has led to partnerships with business and private landowners that yields good conservation and public access. And we met with some landowners that explained why they entered into the LWCF program.
As we look off, we can see, the sagebrush steppe country behind us. Some of the timbered country over here to the south is all under conservation easement now.
So what proportion of the operation is under conservation easement?
Oh, over 95%.
And is there any public access on these easements that you've allowed?
We allow public hunting on a first-come, first-served basis. Our personal experience has been that partnerships developed with that conservation easement. Let me give you an example. One of our BLM leases was challenged a few years ago by a group that didn't believe that there should be cattle grazing on federal lands. And because of the partnerships we developed with both Trout Unlimited and with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, those folks came to the table with us and said, yeah, maybe we need to make some changes in our grazing management, but we don't need to remove the cattle from the landscape. And so that partnership, to me, is really strong and really valuable. We're much stronger together than we are as an island.
So, David, your experience with this program has been pretty positive, and you've built good relationships with the federal government. But a lot of people have mistrust. Some might say this is just a federal land grab. What would you say to those folks?
I understand that concern. I've certainly heard it. We considered that. We also considered, what if we didn't do that? The opportunities for our children would go away. And I think this land is better off for having people that love it, on it, operating it.
The community wanted this to be public. They were very much concerned about access, that traditional use of these lands. So I don't think I do look at that as a land grab. You have this amazing structure here where you still have all the public access. You have the ability to hunt and fish, do all the things that traditionally people in this valley really cherish. And yet, as landowners, we can still graze and we can still timber those lands and have all that that makes us whole as an economy right here in the valley. This is about communities coming together to build a resource, build an economy that allows people to enjoy this landscape for generations to come.
The LWCF program has just been key to so many of the conservation successes that improve people's lives here in western Montana. And we're going to see some of those on our walk today. So that's the North Hills. That was one of our earlier conservation projects where LWCF played a key role. And then the next one over is Mount Jumbo. It's an incredible conservation achievement for this community. And then the next one over is Mount Sentinel. Public access is provided across the whole thing.
So this can really happen anywhere in the United States, not just Missoula, Montana. All communities actually have that funding available to them for developing these sites for recreation.
Every single state has special places that are worth conserving, and if communities are willing to work really hard, the Land and Water Conservation Fund is there to help.
Legislation like the Land and Water Conservation Fund are vital to maintaining our conservation legacy here in America. But all the money in the world can't make people come together and collaborate on how to best use it. We need conservation groups, landowners, elected officials, and the state and federal agencies all working together for the future of our public lands. Nobody's talking yet this morning. Well, we haven't found a turkey yet this morning, but doesn't really matter. It's just good to be out here with you and enjoying our public lands.
This is where I find my solace, you know? This is where I kind of recenter myself, I would say. You know, we all live like kings. We own 640 million acres of public land. That all belongs to us. And that land doesn't care who your parents were, doesn't matter how much money you made last year, and really there couldn't be anything more democratic than our public lands. The squeaky wheel still gets the grease in this country, but you have to use your voice. And I think if we do use our voice, our legacy that is our public lands will be just fine.
Now we'll head to Oklahoma to have another look at how farmers are preventing runoff that carries nutrients and soil from their land and contaminates local streams and rivers. With some government support, farmers are using cover crops and smart pasturing of livestock to reduce their use of chemical fertilizers, improve water quality, and increase their bottom line.
Check all the bearings?
I did. I checked all the bearings. I got ready to go.
These are Group 4 soybeans that we're about ready to plant. It's pretty good. They're not cracked.
Well, we want to get the planter folder out.
Yep. You can go to work then.
I can go to work. That's right.
I think it's ready to swing.
Okay.
I'm Trey Lamb, and I'm a farmer here in southern Oklahoma.
And I'm Trey's daughter, Jean Lamb. I'm a fourth-generation agriculturalist.
The cover crop basically keeps something on the soil living, and it also provides cover, which the cover means it covers the soil. We don't want the bare dirt showing.
I'm really excited to be back farming here because we are doing cover crops. We're not doing things the way that they've always been done and traditionally, and we're doing a lot of experimentation to make the environment better, not only here on our farm, but for the people in our community.
So we're making this track here, and that's where the seed will be, right here in that cutaway. Very little soil disturbance there. And you have the residue from a previous wheat crop, a previous corn crop, and a previous soybean crop. So we have 3 years worth of residue still protecting the soil.
And that's the creek that runs right along the edge. 20 years ago, we would put double the phosphorus fertilizer on so that we could build the soil back. Well, we'd put that on and it'd come a big rain and we would lose a lot of that. So all of this is drained down there. So if we have a crop growing here, the water comes off clear. But in those times when it was plowed or turned under and there was exposed dirt, the water would be just straight red. And that was carrying away the soil and the nutrients.
I like my neighbors, but I don't want them to have my topsoil. And planting these crops keeps it here and keeps it in the family.
Hard red winter wheat. We actually realized that we need to make it into a system that involves other diverse crops growing in the off-season and livestock.
I love cattle. I've been around cattle my entire life. Cows have a personality. Every cow's different. Every cow raises a different kind of calf.
Livestock are an important part of the whole soil health system. By having the cattle out here, their manure being deposited here, it just recycles that and builds the soil.
You know, I'll pull in with the feed truck, and I got a big bale of hay on the back, and some of the cows, their ears will perk up, and they know it's feed time, and they're excited. And it's probably more about the feed than it is me, but I still get a big kick out of it.
Most of our streams are impaired or polluted based on what runs off ag land. By voluntarily making these changes, by having these plants there 365 days a year, it keeps that water going into the soil rather than off, and we can clean up that water. And with some help from the Department of Agriculture, from the Natural Resource Conservation Service, we were able to make that decision.
My name is Brandon Chandler. I'm the district conservationist in Garvin County.
The Natural Resources Conservation Service is a federal agency under the Department of Ag that assists landowners in finding solutions to their resource concerns.
Trey, this is what we call soil out of place. Just gets here, you know, by the runoff.
You can see by the color of it that it's carrying a lot of topsoil. Our whole adoption of cover crops and no-till farming are just so that we don't lose this topsoil, so it doesn't get in the water, so it doesn't carry it off of our farms. You know, it used to run clear. You can imagine what it costs to clean up this kind of water where you can drink it. The water quality benefits are something that we can be proud of and something that we can tell our kids and our grandkids that's something that we were a part of. But really, it's what happens on this farm that's the most important for our family.
So we're going out to a gentleman named Larry Keenan. He's got Red Angus livestock that he's running out there. Morning, Larry.
How are you?
I'm good, yourself?
Good.
Yep.
We've got a commercial cow-calf operation, predominantly Red Angus cattle. Got a couple of Red Angus bulls and started trying Red Angus and absolutely fell in love with them. Just because we're small producers does not reduce our responsibility to take care of the land, the water, the resources. So this is Sandy Creek.
And there was a snake.
This creek was our primary water source for our cattle. The cattle were constantly standing in the creek water, dirtying up, not the most preferred thing for the cattle to be doing. So we learned about some of the programs that NRCS used to assist producers that wanted to increase the quality and quantity of water in this area. And so we contacted the NRCS representative here.
So this is the fence that was put up through our financial program to remove cattle access to the creek area.
And the buffer zone that we have here around the creek naturally filters any of the runoff. We got cow manure and all types of things that might be included in that runoff. So this is one of the water points that we installed after fencing off the creek area. This one water trough will basically provide water to 3 different pastures, which will allow us to incorporate a rotational grazing system. How are y'all?
Doing well. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Larry Keenan.
I'm Shannon Phillips. It's very nice to meet you.
When we made the decision to fence it off, we were basically eliminating our only water source for the cattle.
Well, it is really one of the best things that producers can do because a healthy riparian buffer can reduce pollution to streams by up to 90%. We never step on private property, and so you've given us permission to do water quality monitoring here. So should we start out over there? So we're going to be doing a fish collection today. We're looking for a lot of different types of fish, but we're also looking for the fish that are intolerant of pollution.
This is called a seine.
This is Greg Clarkson, and he's one of our resident experts in water sampling.
And so what we're going to do is attempt some seine pools here and just see what we get. Okay, stop right there, Robert.
All right.
We've got one critter. Operating procedures have us do a 400-meter stretch of stream. Go ahead and probe that undercut bank and woody debris there. Ready? Yep. I'm going to go ahead and bring it up. I saw something.
Oh, and a crawfish.
We got a crawfish?
Yeah.
And of course, as we collect these fish, we count them and take note of what species we have. And then when we're finished sampling, we let the fish go. Just get on the other side of that little submerged log right there. These are shiner species, fish that are very sensitive to changes in water and habitat quality. So we've come to the end of the reach of stream that we're sampling, and we've actually encountered 2 species of fish, the most tolerant species and the most intolerant species. This is the money ball right here.
We're really happy to see these individual species here today. What that tells us is, compared to the samples that we've done in the past here, that this stream is in good shape. It hasn't degraded over time, so landowners in this watershed are doing a great job maintaining their conservation practices.
The water systems are all related to each other, and they all are touching. So the best part of my job is getting to work with those landowners. You know, the steps through and the final results. It's very rewarding, very satisfying, just helping those people help their land.
You know, many people recycle these days, but few stop to think about it in truly personal terms. Scientists say urine is chock full of the same nutrients commonly found in fertilizer. In our Science Nation report from Vermont, Miles O'Brien has more on a new push to put our urine to better use.
On this hot summer afternoon outside Brattleboro, Vermont, farmer Dean Hamilton has fired up his tractor and is fertilizing his hayfield with human urine. That's right, pee. Now, I know what you're thinking, but it's not really gross. It's ultimately about making our water cleaner and our agriculture more sustainable.
I've been surprised at how many people actually get beyond the giggle factor pretty quickly and are willing to listen.
This field has also been fertilized with urine.
This is a place where we can take a lot of fertilizer products and test them out.
This lettuce is destined for the lab, not the market. So too for water samples they collect from the soil. With support from the National Science Foundation, environmental engineer Nancy Love and a team that includes the nonprofit Rich Earth Institute are fine-tuning new methods to recycle urine into fertilizer.
There's a great quote by Buckminster Fuller about how pollution is nothing but the resources that we're not harvesting and that we allow them to disperse because we've been ignorant to their value.
Fertilizer is made of nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus that require huge amounts of energy to produce. Urine is full of those same nutrients, but we literally flush them down the toilet.
What we want to do is we want to fix two problems at once. Create fertilizer that can then sustain our agriculture, at the same time eliminate waste on the one hand and the need to mine and create fertilizer on the other hand.
The Rich Earth Institute has been using urine as fertilizer since 2012. They collect about 7,000 gallons a year thanks to a loyal group of dedicated donors.
We now have people who have some source separating toilets in their homes. We also have people who have 55-gallon barrels where they collect and then we transport to our farms. And we've also got a large urine depot.
Their method so far has been to pasteurize it to kill any microbes and then apply it directly onto hay fields. Now that they've partnered with Love and her team, they're looking to go to the next level.
There are three things we really are trying to do with the urine in this kind of next phase. We're trying to concentrate it, we're trying to apply technologies to reduce odor, and we're trying to deal with the trace contaminants like the pharmaceuticals.
The pharmaceuticals issue is an important one that they are working hard to understand better. Heating up urine kills germs, but doesn't have any effect on chemicals like drugs that pass through our bodies.
We know pharmaceuticals are a problem for aquatic organisms and water systems. It's debatable about the impact on human health at very, very low levels. Independent of that, I think most people would prefer that they not be in their food. And so we are taking the steps to remove them from these products.
For Love, this is all about redesigning our wastewater infrastructure for the 21st century. Too many nutrients in the water leads to poor water quality by causing hazardous algal blooms.
Our water emissions are going into very sensitive water bodies that are vulnerable to these nutrient loads. We need to change that dynamic, and if we can capture them and put them to a beneficial use, that's what we're trying to do.
Recycling urine into fertilizer to make agriculture greener and our waterways cleaner. Miles O'Brien reporting.
Now, here's a quick look at stories from our next show.
One of the most important parts of this new agreement is that it dedicates water to the environment, to river flows and to restoring habitat in the Delta.
Rivers don't know boundaries. Now, in times of drought and in times of surplus, a better plan to share the vital resources of the Colorado River between the United States and Mexico.
We're standing at a tower here in the Ciénaga Santa Clara that overlooks this landscape. We're in the lower part of the Colorado River Delta in Mexico, and you can see this is a barren area that has been heavily impacted by the changes in the Colorado River Basin. It's a desolate landscape with very little value for wildlife or for people. But over here, you can see in the Ciénaga Santa Clara, what we can recover with just a little bit of water and protection.
There are communities along the Colorado River in Mexico that haven't seen water in their river for many decades. A few years ago, as part of the previous agreement, there was a pulse flow in the delta. And the pulse flow is a big volume of water that went all the way from the U.S. border to the Sea of Cortez. It reconnected the river to the sea. And when the water flowed down the Colorado River for the first time in decades, the communities came out in force and had big parties.
So right now we have about 60 species that are already using the site, but as trees get bigger, then we expect that that will increase.
Helping wildlife make a comeback.
So if I compare the image from my drone with what the data is telling us, it paints a much clearer picture. We're striving for what comes off our field to look something like this. We know, based on all the data we gather, that these conservation practices work, and there are things that we can do and continue to improve to be better stewards. It's slow to change people's minds, but I think in the end, there's hope.
Combining technology with generations of farming know-how. That's next time on This American Land.
That's all for now, and thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on This American Land.
For more information about this program, visit thisamericanland.org and like us on Facebook.